Hey class, this is Michael Cruz with my capstone presentation for PE 589. Before I get started, I just wanted to congratulate everyone on a job well done. What an accomplishment. We all have something to be extremely proud of, and I'm definitely proud of you all. I'm thankful for you all. I definitely learned a lot from everyone and appreciated everything you brought to the class, so thank you for that. I wish you the best of luck moving forward, and I hope you all take some time to really sit back and enjoy this, celebrate it with those you love, and just enjoy the time. So congratulations again. Great job. I'm proud of you all. I love you all, and I wish you the best once again. So to dive into the study and to give the presentation. So the name of my study was College Baseball Players' Perceptions of Transformational Leadership and its Impact on Personal Development and Team Success. So the real motivation behind the study, I'm absolutely fascinated by leadership. I love studying it. I love reading about it. I love doing it. It's something that's challenging. It grows you, and it's really just an adventure at the end of the day. And also pursuing coaching. You know, I feel really purposed in my career as a coach. I've always respected the platform of coaching. I've respected the role that the coaches play in our society. I think it's an extremely important one, and one that just has invaluable and immeasurable impact on people's lives. So I mean, I think it's just something just amazing to pursue. Whether it's coaching or teaching, I think they're very very similar. So yeah, my main goal in coaching, though, and it coincides with the study, is to use baseball really as the platform to develop men and to help them be better people, to grow them personally, to grow them academically, spiritually, and obviously athletically too. I mean, I love the game of baseball. That's why I coach baseball. But really, my main motivation is to just help college-aged people developed into who they were created to be and who they want to be. I hope to aid in their development in some capacity. So the purpose statement of this study was to examine college baseball players' perceptions of transformational leadership behaviors and its impact on personal development and team success. So to provide you with some of the working definitions for this study, I'll start with transformational leadership. Transformational leadership, it's a multifaceted leadership style that is centered on empowering and promoting followers to increase their personal awareness, to help them better understand moral values and enhance that standard in the group or the team, to buy into inspiring visions and be motivated by a vision that's clear and concise, something that's moving forward every single day. And lastly, it's directed around taking people's goals, personal interests, and moving them toward the collective good or the greater good of the team instead of just personal success or personal interest. Like I said, it's a multifaceted leadership style, and for my study, my working definition, I used four facets or sections of transformational leadership, and those include, number one, idealized influence. Idealized influence is centered around the coach or the leader being a role model and having influence over their followers because of their ability to live at a higher standard in terms of morals, ethics, and boundaries. The second one is inspirational motivation. This is centered around the leader's ability to provide a focused vision for the team to pursue, something that's consistent, something that's clear, focused, and can motivate the followers to work towards something every single day. The third is intellectual stimulation. This is really centered around helping people look at problems as opportunities to grow, and also helping them come to conclusions on creative ways to overcome problems, or come up with solutions towards problems. Individual consideration is where the leader looks at every person as an individual and doesn't use the same tactics to overcome problems or to provide solutions for various amounts of things. But it's really important for the follower to know that the leader is looking at them as an individual and not just expecting them to fall in line with a specific type of mold or certain way of doing things. So really important on that one. The working definition for personal development is where people experience enhanced psychological and sociological growth. So there's really 4 aspects that I used for my study. One was confidence and self-esteem. The other, the ability to connect with others or enhance relationships. The third, enhanced prioritization on physical health. And the last is enhanced character and moral decision making. Pardon me. The central research questions for this study were: number 1, what are college baseball players' perceptions of transformational leadership behaviors impact on their personal growth? And number 2, what are college baseball players' perceptions of transformational leadership behaviors on team success? Now moving on to slide number 3. This is the first article that I want to highlight. This was a study done by Banwell and Kerr, and it was coaches' perspectives on their roles in facilitating the personal development of student athletes. So this was just a great find for me. The purpose of this study was to examine the perceptions of Canadian inter-university or college sport coaches toward their role in facilitating the personal development of their student athletes. So it was a great study. The researchers, they utilized a qualitative approach and utilized qualitative methodologies when analyzing data and gathering data. The participants of the study were 8 college coaches from various sports, but they all belong to the same institution. Procedure, the researchers, they seeked approval from their human ethics board. They got it approved, and then they sent a recruiting email with information about the study and an informed consent form to coaches that they just had in their network, people they had previous relationship with. And then once they received interest from the coach, then they got the informed consent turned in from them as well, and then they conducted in-depth, semi-structured interviews. Results of the study were pretty insightful. The 2 higher order themes were conceptualizations of personal development. The second one was influence of coaches on athletes' personal development. But the big things that really stand out to me with the results of this study were coaches feel that they play an important role in their athletes' personal development and facilitating that. But the authors found that the coaches possessed a weak procedural knowledge of personal development. So conceptually, they didn't know how, they couldn't really articulate what personal development was, what it looks like, how they facilitate it, what they're implementing, and how they're really fostering an environment that helps athletes grow. So I thought that was really insightful. Just studying this for myself, and just kind of coming to an understanding that that coaches believe that we have this ability to develop our players personally, but we can't really define it, and I think that's important if we're going to really have impact and move it forward. And implications for this study, I think it identified a divide between sports and personal development and how we systematically develop our players on a personal level. So it definitely has implications for future study. It opens a door it opened the door for my study. It gave me somewhat of a basis for um, conducting the study, but also just provides just a foundation to really grow on. Um, and other implications is, yeah, in terms of future research, just how do we facilitate personal development? Um, my study is looking at the perceptions of transformational leadership and its impact on personal development, but how are we going to facilitate that in a very practical way? Something we could systematically put in place to enhance our players' development. So, um, those were great findings, huge things with that study. Um, my next one was also pretty great. This one was somewhat of a landmark study. This was a study conducted by Vela, Odes, and Crow called a pilot test of transformational leadership training for sport coaches and its impact on the developmental experiences of adolescent athletes. So this study focused on adolescent soccer players and coaches of adolescent soccer players. The purpose of this study was to conduct a pilot test of transformational leadership training for coaches to determine the effects of transformational leadership behavior from coaches on personal developmental experiences of adolescent athletes. So, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts there, a lot going on, but really these authors were wanting to train coaches of adolescent soccer players in transformational leadership behaviors. So they wanted to not just make them knowledgeable of it, but help them implement it in practical ways. And then they split coaches up. So there was a group of coaches who went through the training and a group of coaches who didn't go through the training. They had the same amount of teams under their care, same number of athletes under their care, and they checked in with them at 2 different times over 2 years. And the findings with this study were great too. The authors found that players who were playing under coaches who went through the test and the training for transformational leadership actually experienced more positive developmental experiences, which I think was very insightful and also provided great implications for my study and for future research. So from what it did, it showed a positive correlation between transformational leadership and developmental outcomes in athletes, in adolescents. So this is a huge thing. It extended the current literature in transformational leadership in sports, which is kind of one area that's been called on for future research in several studies. Just to hit on the participants again, we got that adolescent soccer players, coaches of adolescent soccer players. This was a quasi-experimental pre-post design, and that just kind of touches on they checked in with them a few different times throughout an extended period of time. The survey instruments used were the differentiated transformational leadership inventory for youth sports and the Youth Experience Survey for sport. It was a qualitative methodology, and the authors used descriptive statistics to analyze the data. But again, just some really insightful results for sports and for athletes. And the last study I want to highlight is one by Stenling and Tafelivin. The name of this study was Transformational Leadership and Well-Being in Sports, the Mediating Role of Need Satisfaction. So this one was really interesting. Need satisfaction is a psychological term or psychology term that's rooted in self-determination theory. So this is pretty much saying that the human psyche needs 3 aspects or 3 areas met for them to achieve well-being. And the purpose of this study was to examine the impact of coaches' transformational leadership behavior on well-being and to investigate if the effect of transformational leadership on athlete well-being is mediated by need satisfaction. The participants in this study were high school floorball athletes from northern Sweden. I had no idea what floorball was, so I learned something new from this study on that too, which was cool. But it's essentially field hockey or hockey on hardwood or like in a gym. It's indoor hockey, but with no skates. You're on your feet. So it's more similar to field hockey, but in a gym, I guess. So pretty cool. Looks like a fun game you can play. Good, something good to implement into PE class too. But to get back to the study, the procedure, the authors used a descriptive research design. They utilized the transformational teaching questionnaire and a 20-item basic need satisfaction and sports scale, as well as 3 items from WAR's depressed enthusiastic access to measure well-being. The authors used quantitative methodologies in this study with descriptive statistics, and their results, they found high levels of perceived transformational leadership from their coaches, need satisfaction and well-being. And what I think the greatest 2 things about this study were transformational leadership was significantly correlated to need satisfaction and well-being, and need satisfaction was significantly correlated to well-being. So I think it's just more proof transformational leadership can have positive impact in people's lives and help them develop, grow, but really make sure their needs are taken care of and experiencing a good life while they're playing their sport. And I think those are huge implications for us. I think even the need satisfaction, really looking at that conceptually, it's looking at competency, it's looking at autonomy, and relationships. So if those 3 things are being met, then need satisfaction is being met. Therefore, well-being can be met as well. I definitely see the correlation there. I think it's kind of a cool way to look at it, different way to look at it. But I think the greatest implication of this study is that coaches have impact on well-being. They have that role, they play that role in their athlete's life, and I think it's something that everyone in the profession needs to understand, needs to look at, and really take seriously at the end of the day. Moving on to the methodology for my study, I used a embedded research design with mixed methodologies. My participants were college baseball players from a private NAIA Christian university in Southern California. My general demographics, the participants were all male between the ages of 18 and 25 years old, and they were student athletes. The specific demographic of my participants were they had to be currently enrolled at a university, they were active members of the university's baseball team, and they were academically eligible. The survey instrument I used was the Perceived Transformational Leadership Survey. There were 8 preliminary demographic items to start the survey. There were 28 5-point Likert scale items that assessed the impact of transformational leadership on personal development and the impact of transformational leadership on team success. I kind of broke it up per facet, so each facet was posed with the same 7 questions. And so, it kind of worked that way. And then there were also 2 closed-ended items within the 8 preliminary demographic items. And then at the very end, there were 3 open-ended written response items to gather some qualitative data. The procedure I used, I seeked approval from the IRB from APU, and then I sought approval from the head coach at the university to have access to the baseball team and recruit his players to participate in the study. Participants, I actually attended a team meeting where I got to kind of just give them more information about the study as a whole, and then instructions on what to expect if they wanted to study or wanted to participate in the study and how to go about it. I then sent them an email to all the participants, all the recruits, with a link to the perceived transformational leadership survey that was given in Google Forms. And prior to them entering into the survey, there was an electronic consent form, and by entering the survey, they agreed to participate in the study. So they had the option to pull out and remove themselves from the study at any time. And the survey instrument, or the perceived transformational leadership survey, was completed 1 week from the team meeting. So that was the one stipulation or request that they had from me. So my results, to answer the central research question number 1, the impact of transformational leadership, or the perceived impact of transformational leadership on personal development. My quantitative results came back as follows, as we'll see on the PowerPoint. All 4 facets of transformational leadership were perceived to positively impact personal development, which I thought was awesome. Inspirational motivation had the greatest impact on personal development. It scored the highest. And transformational leadership had the greatest impact on enhancing personal confidence. And that was supplemented by the qualitative data that I gathered. One major theme was experience personal development, and then 3 sub-themes were confidence, enhanced work ethic, and enhanced character. Which was very insightful, especially comparing them to the quantitative results. To answer central research question number 2, the perceived impact of transformational leadership on team success. Once again, all 4 facets of transformational leadership were perceived to positively impact team success. Most notably, intellectual stimulation and inspirational motivation were 100% agreed upon by participants as having positive impact on team success. So that was interesting. And then qualitatively, impact of team success was a higher or a major theme, and team cohesion, team confidence, and personal responsibility were sub-themes. So what does it all mean? So my results, they provide support to Banwell and Kerr's study by giving coaches a framework. Coaches believe they have this role in facilitating players' personal development. Well, this is a leadership style that coaches and PE teachers, leaders can implement to foster an environment to help their athletes or their students develop personally. It's similar to Vela, Odes, and Crow's study with the adolescent soccer players. As it demonstrates, this study demonstrates a correlation between transformational leadership and development of athletes spanning different ages, different sports. So it definitely coincides with Vela's results, which I think is great. And then my study offers support to Borman's study, and Borman looked at transformational leadership on player performance, which correlates to team success, but articulating vision and inspirational motivation were 2 things that really impacted player performance in Borman's study. And the thing with articulating vision is that it coincides very closely with inspirational motivation and setting a vision for the team or the group. And to know that inspirational motivation and intellectual stimulation in my study were 2 of the things that were 100% agreed upon. I think that definitely just builds upon the idea that transformational leadership, or aspects of transformational leadership, greatly impact player performance and team success. So those were great commonalities, similarities with other studies. Implications for sport coaches, PE teachers, student athlete success counselors, athletic directors. I think they're enormous for sport coaches. Again, this provides a framework for coaches to implement into their programs, gives us a leadership style that we can follow, something that's clearly defined and so even somewhat complex. So it provides a challenge for us, but regardless, there's more and more support. Support is growing for the fact that coaches have impact on their players, and specifically transformational leadership has positive impact on their players, both from a success standpoint and from a development standpoint. So definitely something that needs to be considered. PE teachers, this could be something to aid in motivation and helping students just develop their physical activity and their physical health. Student athlete success counselors, I think just something that could, when you think of student athlete success counselors, a lot of times they're focused on academics or life skills, and when you tie in especially individual consideration and intellectual stimulation, and you're helping these student athletes come up with just solutions, creative solutions to problems, and looking at problems as opportunities and seeing things in a different light. I think you're helping and aiding in that development as well. And for athletic directors, I think this could be a huge aspect to look at in the hiring process. If you're an athletic director and you value the culture and the environment that you're providing your student athletes, you may want to look at testing potential coaches in transformational leadership, because this may be a style that is going to extend the mission and the values of the university, of the athletic department, but not just that, but maintain it and sustain it, make sure it's staying aligned with what the real goals of the university are and the athletic program. And it's definitely, again, if an athletic director values personal development of their athletes over wins, or wants both, this is definitely a style of leadership where both can be achieved. And then overall, when I look at it, it's just like, wow, what an environment an athletic department could provide for student athletes if we're harmoniously kind of working towards transformational leadership, implementing these behaviors, and just putting that forth in our programs. I think can have tremendous impact on our student athletes. And then lastly, future research and recommendations. I think for future research, and this was a limitation in a few of the studies I read, we examined just one sport, so examining various sports is definitely something that can be looked at in the future. Examining student athletes from different types of institutions, so mine was centered on a Christian institution, but I think it would be amazingly interesting to look at, a Christian institution, a four-year university, a secular university, a community college, and seeing what the differences are, seeing what the similarities are. Does this hold true? Could this be, I don't want to say universal, but something that is consistent across different environments? And then even looking at colleges in different locations, throughout the nation, throughout the world, can be valid for future research. I think this study, using if I were to do it again, I think I may have wanted to do a fully qualitative methodology and just hold semi-structured, in-depth interviews with my participants to really help them stay defined and focused on what the research questions were, or what the goal and what kind of answers we were looking for them to really stick to personal development. I did find in some answers that they took the personal development questions and kind of put them into a baseball performance aspect. So just helping them stay on topic, I think, would have been helpful in a qualitative study. So something for future research as well. And then examining specific facets of transformational leadership on personal development. In my study, they all came back as, having positive relationships with personal development. But I think just looking at focusing in on one behavior, one aspect of transformational leadership and how that affects personal development. And then you could really, focus in on personal development and what aspects that one behavior has. Lastly, examining transformational leadership's impact on specific aspects of personal development. Again, just kind of breaking it down, narrowing it even more. I think that was one limitation of my study. It was still pretty broad. I did my best to narrow it down, but I think the more I got into it, the more I realized, wow, this is broad. This is still, it's still the scope was big. So I definitely, if I were to do it again, would work to narrow it down even more. So yeah, that concludes my presentation. I went over time a little bit. I'm sorry. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something. I hope this was insightful. It sure was for me. But thank you for listening. Again, congratulations. Well done. I'm so proud of every one of you. I love you all. And thank you for the great experience. Have a great night.